Right. So live. Let me see if there's any comments coming in. Chat publicly as Stafford Perkins. All right. Okay. Good evening, one and all. So welcome to yet another chapter in our live, the live we call Under the Spotlight. Today we have a very special guest, a man who has worn many hats during his time of doing or giving public service to Jamaica. You know, I like to ask people to tell their own story. And this gentleman, Mr. Anthony Hylton, proved me right when I said that, because I went to Google as usual to try to get something on him. And what I pulled up, I never even realized how many hats you wore during your time of serving Jamaica in government, in and out of government. And when I say the ruling side of government, because you have been there all the time. With us is Mr. Anthony Hylton, Member of Parliament for Western St. Andrew. Welcome, Mr. Hylton. And if you don't mind, maybe 5 minutes or so, tell us as much as you can about yourself, because you have a very long resume.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I'm looking for as far back as baby days, as young as you want to bring up.
I don't know if you want to take up the entire show, but just to say that born and grew up in Jamaica, in St. Thomas, Yalas to be particular. Went to Kingston College and left in lower six and went away to the United States to study, really. Did my undergraduate degree at Morgan State University in Baltimore, and then went on to Georgetown Law School, practiced law for a while in Baltimore, and then went to do my master's in England, focusing on transportation, aviation, shipping, and commercial law. After that, I practiced in New York, aviation and transport law, and then in Washington, D.C., before I came back to Jamaica in 1998. Really did my Norman Manley Law School, and then immediately went into public service, beginning at the Office of the Prime Minister. Served there for a while before I entered politics in St. Thomas, where I'm from, and was a member of parliament there for 2 terms, but lost the election in 2000, due mainly to the travels. I was in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at the time, and substantial travel, because we had probably the most difficult agenda that Jamaica and CARICOM had at that time, where we were trying to negotiate several trade agreements, including the World Trade Organization agreement. So a very hectic period, lost. Thank the people of St. Thomas, and then spent some time as ambassador to the Honorable P.J. Patterson, with special assignment in the energy sector, because at the time we had started, when I entered the last election, I was a Minister of Energy. We had started to look at liquefied natural gas as an alternative source of electricity and energy for Jamaica. And so when I lost, I was appointed ambassador to continue that special mission of trying to get LNG into Jamaica. That was not to happen, but at that period, but it laid the foundation for what was to come later on when we did get LNG into Jamaica. But after that, I was...
Never mind, sorry. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I was I was invited in by the people of Western St. Andrew to represent them, really, and went and liked the place, the people, saw the opportunity, saw the challenges, many challenges there were, still are, but saw the opportunities as well, and embraced it, and was elected. This is my fourth term there, and I've been working to help in the development of the community and continue to do so. In the meantime, I've served in my last assignment. I served as Minister of Foreign Affairs again, and Foreign Trade, and then Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce. That was my last portfolio assignment in which we articulated the Logistic Hub initiative.
It's a good place to start because in my estimation, that was one of the most exciting times in that Portia Simpson Miller's administration. I was it's exciting for me because I was fully attuned to what it meant to bring the logistics hub to Jamaica, because there are three major what they call nodes in logistics hubs throughout the world. One is Singapore, the other one is in Holland, and the third one is in Dubai. What I know of especially Dubai was a little desert country, nothing. The oil had run out, but they seem to have some very smart people in that place. And they went out and started the logistics hub. And it has made that country into a very wealthy country. So when I saw that this was coming, I was so excited. I encouraged all young people to take whatever courses they were giving. You guys were, giving out at the time, to get into this field, this very lucrative field, and all kinds of excitement. I don't want to take the talk away from you. So tell me what happened during that period. You got the initiative started. You got it started. What happened?
Well, first of all, I think the big idea was easily understood by some people, persons like yourself, who understood the context, the history, and the opportunities. For others, they thought that there was a lot of misconception, some of it quite deliberate, quite frankly, because I remember at the time the then opposition, the Jamaica Labour Party, really made, and the spokesman on that, Carl Samuda, really tried to be as really obstructive as he could, and rather than assisting where he knew that the project had a lot of opportunity, it seems that it became a sort of political football. And unfortunately, it was aided by a segment of the media, quite frankly. And so they distorted the very objective of the project. So for example, when we talked about Goat Island was one possible location. Very early issues was raised as to the environmental implication and the appropriateness of the location. But as I said at the time and tried to explain many times, Goat Island, if it happened, would have just been one location. The fact is, all of Jamaica could play host in one form or another to the logistic hub, because Jamaica is an island, and the entire island of Jamaica is really just big enough, if we went about the planning correctly, just big enough to locate the various aspects and the many opportunities for Jamaica in that particular activity. So the idea of the logistic hub was not a location. It was understanding the broad concept and the broad construct for the logistic hub and for our investors, both local and foreign, to really take advantage of the many opportunities that represents. And so I think the communication of it, in particular, there was a particular aspect of it where some investors showed interest in looking at aspects of it. And immediately they were talking about at the time investing $5 billion US dollars. 5 billion at that time perhaps was the largest sum of investment ever mentioned in Jamaica. And people thought it was incredulous and incredible and it couldn't happen, and sought to find all kinds of distorting and distortive information, when simply all that we did was to say, okay, you have demonstrated that you have some knowledge and interest. They asked to sign a memorandum of understanding, which was quite normal at the time. I mean, well, and still is, historically, and still is, what investors do, especially in a project of that size, before they disclose certain sensitive information, both commercially and financially. They would have you sign a memorandum of understanding, or in some instances, a non-disclosure agreement. That is quite normal. So we went about trying to get that done. And all of a sudden, those in the media, and I think pushed by some political agenda, quite honestly, started to distort the entire thing. And so at that juncture, because the election was in the air already, it just became a political football, which I think is quite unfortunate, because a tremendous amount of work was done, including the commissioning of a study, the results of which came out after the election and after the then opposition now became the government. They adopted that study and the results of that study, which really supported very strongly and defined the particular aspect of the logistic hub that Jamaica could be successful in. So the study, which was financed, paid for by the World Bank, was a very positive study. The government, still is the government of the day, accepted the report, tabled it, but has really done very little to date about it. They are coming to it now because there is a recognition that that is a missed opportunity. And so we have now today at the World Expo in Dubai 2020, which is now going on right now in Dubai. They are promoting a logistic hub as a solution. I welcome it, but we lost at least 4 years in pushing ahead with that very, very important project. And as it turns out, the pandemic has made it very clear why the hub should have been in place, and had it been in place, the kind of benefits that Jamaica would be reaping at this time. Because what the pandemic really did and demonstrate is that the supply chain, which is a new term for a lot of people, but that's what the logistic hub was about. The supply chain has been broken by the pandemic, and the implications of that for the world and for commerce and for manufacturing industry is quite severe, and we're paying the price. Jamaica is now paying a price, so that rather than being a major beneficiary of the pandemic through the logistic hub, we are now suffering like so many other countries because of the broken supply chain and the shortage of product, both consumer goods, raw material, and increased prices in those items. So I consider that has been a loss for Jamaica. And my only hope is that the government of the day sees the opportunity with both hands and now see the wisdom of pressing ahead with the logistic hub, because it is central to Jamaica's growth and development.
Let me ask you this. I remember at one point, some Israelis had stepped up and shown, and I want to go back to that situation where the gentleman, a whole bunch of noise was made about the gentleman who came forward and said he could put the money together. But as when I said, the Israelis had shown interest. Whatever happened with that?
Well, that interest from the Israelis came while we were out of government. That did not come during my time. It came during the current administration. And we were never really close to it, but we didn't hear anything specific from it. No report was given, was tabled in Parliament. No update was given as to what was the finding, what was the conclusion, and quite frankly, where the relationship has been or still is. We don't know. We just didn't hear anything about their involvement. But you should know that the Israelis are very huge players in logistics, because the truth is, all developed countries and developing countries wanting to develop must pay close attention to their logistics operation, because it really is the movement of our people or goods or services and data in a very efficient way. Our tourism industry, for example, benefits significantly from logistics operation. We have just not focused on it in the way that we ought to. And I believe if we give it the kind of focus that we should be giving it, even our tourism sector would improve and benefit even greater than it currently is. Because at the heart of it is really logistics operation in the movement of people.
So with that, we heard another term that came up during when the government changed, when your government changed. I think it was Mike Henry was talking about the multimodal system. How does that compare to, say, the logistics hub?
Well, I support Mike Henry's focus was really on a particular aspect of the logistics hub, and that really focused on the multiple transport activities. So that what Mike Henry was really speaking to was the fact that you could have, on the one hand, the trucking of goods, you could have the rail service involved, and you have, of course, air and sea transportation. That aspect of it is the multimodal aspects of the global logistic hub and logistics in general. But there's far more to logistics than just the transportation aspects of it. So Mike Henry's focus, which I totally supported and said so publicly. And in the end, it was really Mike and I who really saw eye to eye on it. And so even though we represent we're a different spectrum, the political spectrum, we both saw that it is a critical part of the wider logistic hub.
Do you think he was just maybe looking at, in a more parochial way, looking at Jamaica and not the wider picture of saying this thing is huge, this is a worldwide operation?
No, I think quite honestly, I think he understood that the dimensions of it and the multimodal speak not just to the domestic transportation, but also the international connectivity. I'm sure he was aware of that, but I think it was just one way of kind of really differentiating himself and trying to really focus on that aspect of it, given what Vernon Field, which was a development that I fully support, still think it should happen. And again, that is a project that is, again, lagging way behind and not to Jamaica's credit. So as I said, Mike Henry understood the transportation aspects of logistic and spoke to it. But global logistic is bigger than simply the transport aspect. You have, for example, critical part of it is the warehousing, storage and distribution, retailing aspects of it. The technology is a big part of it, so that you have Amazon stepping into the space and really transforming logistics from just a mundane kind of activity to now introduce e-commerce as a critical part of global logistics. So it remains an area that is fast transforming, that technologies is transforming, particularly digital and digital technology, artificial intelligence, machine learning, the whole works. And so it remains a very exciting area. And quite frankly, the longer Jamaica take to seize that opportunity, the more our economy is going to suffer, because logistics is a critical part. It touches every part of the economy. And once you get the logistics going, every other part of the economy benefit, industry benefit, tourism benefit, all other industries benefit from logistics. And I may say this, it is one of the things that developing countries have to learn for themselves. The developed world does not see it as their responsibility to focus the attention of developing countries to say, hey, here's one aspect of the economy you have not paid sufficient attention to, and that is the underlying logistics and supply chain operation. And they've been doing that and doing that successfully for years. In fact, if you look at what happened in the US Congress recently with the $1.2 trillion of what they call infrastructure development, that is largely about improving their logistics and supply chain operation. That's essentially what that is. And so while the developed world is very clear about the importance of this activity to supporting and growing and developing their economies, the developing world has simply lost focus and has never given logistics and the supply chain operations the kind of focus that it needs. I think the veil has come off now because the pandemic has made it quite clear that the supply chain is real. It may be imperceptible, but it is real, and it has consequences for our macroeconomic stability and for economic growth.
And the fact that what is happening now with out on the Pacific side, where all those ships are backed up miles out into the sea, this would have been an opportunity that they could have relieved that situation and say, come through Jamaica, offload in Jamaica, and then head back out. Because when you look at the Panama Canal, you drive through the Panama Canal, if the pilot or the captain or whoever is piloting that ship doesn't look, he will run straight into Jamaica. He could land straight into Jamaica. It was, say an object traveling at a very fast pace, it would end up straight in Jamaica if you come through the canal. And so we are strategically positioned for that. And I'm not so sure when we talk about the logistics hub, I'm hearing, even though I know you know it, but what I need is to get the aspect of it out to say that this is not just about Jamaica. This is about the world, the entire world, all the goods and whatever services traveling across the globe would come through Jamaica, heading into the North America, all of North America and South America. We would control all of that. And to show the importance of it, the Dominican Republic, which is kind of off the beaten track. You'd have to pass Jamaica and go maybe a couple of 100 miles after to get to the Dominican. So that is costly to the shippers or even the air cargo carriers. While we are there, the minute you come out of the canal, you drop in Jamaica, you offload. Do you know the cost of every container that would come off a ship and stay in Jamaica for maybe a minute or two, maybe a day? What would be a cost per se, one container?
Well, what I can tell you, and you're quite right. While we do nothing, others are moving ahead. And the Dominican Republic sees the opportunity and is now marketing itself and positioning itself as the global hub in the Caribbean. The truth, though, is that it does not have the attributes and the opportunity that Jamaica has. But the fact is, if Jamaica does nothing and continue to fiddle, then others are acting, and the focus will shift. And with it, the kinds of investment that we know is possible. And those investments are quite substantial. So that the $5 billion that I talked about when I was in government, that is now being dwarfed by several billions of dollars of investment that everyone now knows is possible and will happen.
And you see, Biden is talking about trillions. He's not talking about billions anymore.
Absolutely. So what I will say to you is this. You are quite correct about the geographic proximity and the positioning, the geostrategic location of Jamaica vis-a-vis the Panama Canal, because the Panama Canal is one of those very critical commercial waterways, and it links, as you said, global commerce. So Jamaica will just be a cog in the global trading system, and a very important cog, so that no longer will it just be known as a tourism destination. It will have status and importance from being a major player in global commerce. And that is what we're losing sight of. And I hope not for too much longer, because as each year we go farther and farther behind. The simple fact, though, is that luckily for us, we have one of the major ports of the world. The Cape Port of Kingston is one of the 7th largest natural harbor in the world. And it's one of the key assets that we have. But we have many other assets that position Jamaica as really the preeminent country in the region to take advantage of this global logistics hub.
Talk about it in specifics. What is it that we're losing? Because there was a period, or the way I know the world logistics, or the hub, which would be the fourth node of these hubs. The fourth would be Jamaica. There's a period when it was being calculated, even the population of Jamaica probably would change because it would create so many jobs. Talk some of that and the kinds of income that would come to Jamaica, because you're not, I call it this because it came up recently and I said, you are the man who was in charge and you would be best able to tell us about it. I think you're being a bit modest with it. I need for you to speak directly to some of the specifics, the kind of income, the job creations, all those kinds of things.
Well, the job creations, I mean, the opportunity for jobs are significant. You're talking about building an entire sector, and a dominant sector, because as I've said, I tried to explain before, the logistic hub is not only a functioning operation, it also is an industry in and of itself. Its functionality is to affect and to connect with other industries so that it improves the other existing industry. Everything is improved by it. Education is transformed because we're now talking about a shift in focus. Luckily, some of our educators have grasped the idea that you have now to move with some of the educational training. So it is my understanding now that at each of our universities, every one of them, including community colleges, they're now having some program in logistics, whether it be supply chain management, logistics, inventory management, a range of skills training, a range of opportunities are being created. The fact is that logistics today is far more important than finance and management, because it is a kind of activity that is a growth activity, as I said, particularly when you put the IT with it, the tech industry with it, because I mentioned earlier that artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the Internet of Things are changing the entire landscape for logistics. So you're talking about hundreds of new jobs at high level of proficiency, and the pay is humongous. Take, for example, if we had moved ahead in the way that I argued in my own constituency, I talked about the creation of a workforce college that I've been pressing for years. At that workforce college, which by the way, is supported strongly by all industries in the Spanish Town area, which is in my constituency. Every one of them supported it, and we presented the findings, and yet we have not been able to move that project. Had we done so, right now, the major shortage in America right now, reinforcing the broken supply chain, shortages in managers. Read this week that the salary in Pennsylvania, for example, in the warehouse industry is $28 per hour for the logistic types operation. So you can calculate what a 40-hour work week would look like if you're being paid $28 $28,000 United States per. So that's the kind of benchmarking, that's the kind of job opportunity. We have the opportunity in ship repairs. Some entities, German entity has shown an interest in having a ship repair in Jamaica. That has started, but it's just been stymied. Exactly where it is, I'm not sure, because it is private investor interest and they have gone silent. But you know, in America, in Montego Bay, I hear talk recently of the cruise ships coming, and then you have something called chandeliering, which is just provisioning for the ships that would come into Jamaica and pick up the passengers here from different parts of the world to continue on their cruise. That's part of the logistics operation. So, as I said, it is multifaceted. The job implications are myriad, and in essence, this is why I spoke about it in terms of the logistics-centered economy, because it will be driving an entire economy on its own steam and affecting an entire economy. So that's the dimension of the opportunity that faces us, and the sooner we grasp it, the better of all of Jamaica will be.
All right, let me just use this right here to kind of remind people what is happening here. You're now on a part of the live called Under the Spotlight. I'm your host, Stafford Perkins. I'm speaking with former Minister of Commerce, Trade, Energy, you name it. He has worn foreign affairs, and he has worn many hats while serving under the People's National Party government of Portia Simpson Miller. A most unfortunate thing happened, as far as I'm concerned.
And PJ Patterson.
And PJ Patterson. And to me, a most unfortunate thing happened to Jamaica just about the time when the logistics hub was frontal on the agenda to happen. What I'd like to ask you, do you think your efforts might have been kind of stymied, stalled, set back by people within your own ranks who might have been jealous of this very huge project? Because that is something, it's unprecedented. You think you might have been stymied in any way by jealousy or anything like that?
Well, the People's National Party, like every other political party, it's a human institution, and human emotions and vices, all of that are possible. All of that is a possibility. But my focus is not so much about that. Perhaps some of them, like the broader public, just did not understand or appreciate exactly what was being put forward and being articulated. So you have to make allowance for all of that. My principal focus now is that Jamaica realizes that it is missing an opportunity, and that the global pandemic has caused people to refocus and to start asking questions, where is the logistic hub? And as I said, I am pleased to see that in Dubai today, and there's an article that I just saw that the global logistic hub is the focus of the activity of Jamaica's activity in Dubai in the World Expo. So it tells me that there is some awakening to the fact that we have lost and are losing a major opportunity, and the time has come for us as a country to really put aside the political argument and the political debate and to focus on what is a real opportunity for Jamaica, which is to play the role that God has designed for this country. Remember that the pirates didn't come to Jamaica by accident. They came to Jamaica because of its location. And one of the strategic locations of Jamaica is not just to the Panama Canal, which is a really fairly recent development and expansion, but that from the very beginning, God had situated Jamaica close to the windward passages going into Europe and the other seaway and the international trade route. Jamaica has one of the closest positioning to the international trade route as any other country. And that's what gives it an advantage as opposed to the Dominican Republic, which is, as you said at the beginning, off the beaten path. But they are making the kind of move that Jamaica should have made 4 years ago and still have the opportunity to make if we wake up and smell the coffee and really start playing politics and just really get on with the work.
All right, let me try and change gear a little bit here. Another important event that was taking place while the Portia Simpson Miller government was still in power, and just before the end of that government, that administration, there was big talk about the energy. There was a major energy development. I'm not sure if it was yourself or Paul Well who was in charge at the time, but maybe you, because you're so familiar with the energy portfolio, you might be able to speak on it some. There was a period, I remember it was Paul who was pulling it down when he was working to bring it to something like about 12 or so cents, and that sort of made a lot of sense to the economy, to people who were running business. I remember people had closed down their businesses prior to that because of this lack of this very expensive energy cost. Now we're seeing something even worse happening, where Jamaica is now ranked number 5 in the world as having the most expensive energy cost. What do you think is happening with that? And how does it measure up to when you were there, and say maybe when Paul, you would have probably still tuned in some, because what came in to help was like we did the wind farm and maybe some other solar things. What do you think is happening here? Why things have gone out of whack like that?
Well, as I said, in the last my last portfolio before the elections of 2001 was the energy portfolio, and in that period, I started to lead a debate and a discussion and the activities around the introduction of LNG. You may recall that at that time we were focused on getting a limited amount of LNG from Trinidad and Tobago as a CARICOM partner, making the argument that in the context of the single market and economy, the resources of the region really ought properly to be available to all of the countries of the region, both in terms of the markets, which we offered, but also the resources of energy. And we made that argument. In the end, P.J. Patterson and I signed an agreement with the then Trinidad government of Prime Minister Patrick Manning. That agreement was never honored. When Bruce Golding became Prime Minister, Manning simply did not honor that agreement. But we should recall that the push was to introduce liquefied natural gas into our energy mix as part of the way of diversifying our fuel source. LNG, we noted at the time, was a particularly interesting fuel because of its efficiency. It was highly efficient, especially with certain technology, and therefore raised the prospects that we could reduce our energy prices significantly, because it's one of those energy sources that had about 3 or 4 different types of energy: heating, cooling, electricity, a range of different things from this one molecule of energy. So that made it what we call a super fuel. As I pointed out, Trinidad didn't follow through with its commitment on the LNG. We were subsequently, when I left government, Paul Well took over the portfolio, and after a while became convinced, as I was, that LNG made sense. It is in that context and in that period that the Portia Miller administration and the Obama administration came to an agreement on Jamaica getting a supply of LNG from the United States, which by then had become an exporter of LNG. But very few people, the exportation of the LNG was limited, and Jamaica became one of the first countries under which President Obama made it possible to get LNG into Jamaica. Having done so, though, the issue of the infrastructure to make any liquefied natural gas available, because it's a super cool liquid for transportation, but in order to utilize it, you'd have to regasify it, to put it back in the gas form, to generate the electricity and for the heating and cooling. So it's an expensive operation to liquefy it, transport it, regas it, and then use it to convert into electricity. The investments are quite significant, and the startup costs very significant. What I think the debate now is that in the arrangement, because the JPS remains a monopoly operation, and they were the largest energy producers, the LNG company, New Fortress, had to engage and enter into an arrangement with the JPS. The fact is that arrangement remained a private arrangement, which I believe must change, because the OUR, which is our critical supervisor and entity that regulates the sector, I believe that under the review that is taking place, that there will be changes coming to that, where the OUR will and must be empowered to have sight of those agreements, because it cannot be that you have a monopoly status essentially on two ends: a monopoly on the transport of and the distribution of LNG, and a monopoly on electricity. So two monopoly, if we're not careful, what we are sandwiched by are two monopolies. One is not by law, which is LNG, but functions as a monopoly, and the other one is by law. And yet the agreements between them, we are being told that those are private agreements and cannot be shared publicly. Well, it seems to me that they must be shared with the OUR, which is the entity that regulates the sector. And until that is done, we will not be sure about the kinds of arrangement that are struck between the supplier and the user of LNG, and to answer the question whether this is being done to the benefit of the public, of the consumers in general.
All right, so you talk about an agreement that has been signed and it is being held as private. I remember when President Barack Obama came to Jamaica. In my understanding, he gave Jamaica that business, that LNG business. And I don't know if it was a gift, I don't know what it was, but it was given to Jamaica. He came here maybe to deliver that. But somehow it's not sounding like it's any longer, a government to government type. It sounds like some other people, which is why we're, mentioning about these agreements, hidden agreements. Did Barack Obama give the LNG business to Jamaica? Am I misunderstanding that? What happened when he came here, when he came to Jamaica?
No, what he did was, as I said, prior to that agreement, the United States was not exporting its LNG at all. What Barack Obama did was to change that and to make Jamaica a beneficiary of the export of LNG. Now, that was not a gift, because LNG is a very expensive fuel. What he did do is to lift the regulatory barrier and to allow Jamaica as one of the first countries to be able to access or to which the United States could export its LNG to. Now, it was for the government to consider what was the best way to deal with that. Now, if the government had the resources at the time, and remember, I was in the cabinet at the time, and it was a very difficult period because we were going through the worst economic downturn. We were restructuring the economy to deal with the debt issue that we've long suffered from. The government of Jamaica at the time simply did not have the resource, nor think it feasible that the government would have set up and owned the importation facility for LNG. In the event, a private investor approached and presented a credible offer to make LNG available. Now, it is
who the offer was made to?
Well, one, it would that Jamaica would access it, but it would have to be accessed, at least in the beginning, through the largest user energy supplier, which is the JPS. But the idea is that the benefits of it should flow to the Jamaican people. The question now is, now that we've seen that the price of LNG, price of energy has quadrupled, or has skyrocketed. The question is, has Jamaica really benefited from the introduction of the LNG, and could we have done better? The answer to which we really do not know, because those agreements were never made public. And up until now, it is my understanding that not even the OUR has had sight of those agreements.
But
at least in full.
It sounds to me, and I think you're being very cautious or careful, because my impression wasn't that we were given the gas. We were given the license to trade this gas. Because this is something that never happened before.
No. And I'm certain. As I said, I was in the cabinet. Paul was the minister at the time, but it had to come to the cabinet. And it was not a license given to the government of Jamaica. What I'm saying is Jamaica was designated as a country that could be benefited from the import of LNG. And that's the reality. A license was not given to the government.
We were given that
privilege. Correct.
So import it and then sell whatever we imported. I think that was a key component of that deal.
But my point to you is that, and I said it at the beginning, had the government have the resources, because you'd have to use the LNG, because the LNG could not be just shipped just so. To use it, you'd have to convert it to gas.
But listen this now. We saw where 2 times in Jamaica, where companies went public and a huge amount of money was raised through those public offerings. Is it that people weren't thinking in that regard, that Jamaican people, whether it be in Jamaica or in the diaspora, could have put up that money and done that on our own and would not have to be sitting there waiting on these people, who refused to even speak to us and tell us about something that belonged to us?
Well, let me, again, it's a debate, my brother. It's a huge debate, because it reminds me of the argument and the debate about Air Jamaica. That was an asset that we had that served the country well, but it became a burden, financially at any rate, in its operation for the budget of Jamaica. There were many arguments about how we could go about that. One argument was, to privatize it and to have the diaspora benefit. The truth is that, we could, the diaspora has made it clear, very clear, to me at any rate, as I operated as Minister of both Foreign Affairs and Investment, that they are like anybody else. When they make the investment, they are looking for a return on their investment. They're not giving a gift. They want...
No. I'm not even in that, because, I'm a person, I understand finance and those kind of things very well. But other people saw opportunities and grabbed it. I'm saying the opportunities in some of these things could have been given to the people in the diaspora, because you have people in the diaspora who have really good money. And a deal like that, just like how, because I'm going to tell you something right now that is happening on the African continent. People were like, the Chinese were getting everything, the Europeans were getting everything, but there are people who are setting up agencies now, diaspora agencies, to raise the funds in the diaspora to do the investment and development on the African continent. I'm saying it is time that people who are running these countries in the Caribbean to start thinking of the people in the diaspora, because a lot of money is out here. And we just give it to these people. No, we gave it away to them. We give it to them. And they're not giving us anything for it. It's not making any sense to me. You know what I'm saying? And it's time that people start sitting down, because I don't think that every person, I know you're a very qualified and capable person in terms of your academic achievements. You know what it says. You do. You did this kind of, you understood that maritime business because that's what you studied. Some people are getting ministries which they don't have a clue. They just locked it. They're very insular in Jamaica. They never looked out. They never lived out anywhere. They might pass through here an airport and go to some meeting, but they never lived in any of these countries to see how things are done. And I recall one thing would say, and I might be wrong with this, I don't know if you remember it, where Omar Davis literally gave away the gates at, I think it was Heathrow or Gatwick, one of the two major airports in England. It could be Gatwick, could be Heathrow, I forgot which one now. And he got maybe what, $30 million for the two gates. He could have gotten $3 billion. And he, at the end of the day, said he didn't know. No, why you take on a business like that if you don't know? If you had gone to one of the investment managers at Citibank or JP Morgan, they could have guided them much better. And so we gave away a whole bunch of money for nothing. Mm-hmm. And this is what I'm saying. Nobody's trying to say who's out there. Let's start before we give away these things. But that was a very valuable asset we gave away, that gas deal.
Yeah. Let me, and I hear and I understand the point that you make. Let me just say, and as I said, I lived the better part of 18 years in the diaspora, going to school, working.
Maybe that's why you're a bit above the rest.
No, well, I wouldn't say that.
You don't want to get your spot blown up, so I'm going to go to hard.
No. In the areas that I have my expertise, which is aviation, trade, and shipping, this is why I'm certain about the opportunity in logistics, because I understand it. But I'm also saying that the issue of financing is a very, very tricky one. I also pushed the idea of a diaspora bond. I pushed the idea of a diaspora bond when I was in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And that is a debate that went around. We heard different views in the diaspora and from the diaspora. I'm just saying, the dialogue in the diaspora is a rich one. It must continue, but there's a difference between talking about something or talking around it and seizing an opportunity. It was open, I can tell you, it was open to anyone in the diaspora to come forward with a proposal. In fact, I would go further to say it still is open, because now that the regulation has been lifted, it is not just lifted for one person. All it has said is that Jamaica is a country and a destination by which US LNG could be exported. That's what it says. So if you have another person in the diaspora who's interested, there's nothing stopping them from...
I'm not so much talking about an individual. I'm talking about as a group, a group of people, Jamaicans. Just like the way when they floated those stock offerings for the highway. I think the other one was for the one with the solar. No, it was a solar. The wig farm or whatever that is. Right. Those things were oversubscribed, and I'm saying if those things are offered, let it at least be offered. Not to say look for one guy to come with. I don't believe in that. For no one guy to come with money or one lady to come with money. I'm saying make the offer, have the thing worked out to say what will be the cost to do these things, and then offer it in the general market between the Jamaican and the diaspora to participate.
Let me tell you. First of all, I am someone who believes that as well, that the opportunities can be given and should be given. My point to you is that the diaspora has made it clear that they will not.
I think the lack of vision in the logistics hub is showing up here right now, because you see, with this whole Wi-Fi business, because it's so weak, we are now suffering and cannot hear what MP or Member of Parliament Anthony Hylton has to say, and it's frozen up, and it might have just ended our time on this live. I don't know if there is a power cut in Jamaica, but I will have to, yes, he's gone. So we lost this connection. He might come back. We'll try to hold on for a minute or so to see how we can, have him finish making his point. If not, we will have to do this some other time in a part 2, because if there's a power cut in Jamaica, or if there's a collapse in the Wi-Fi system down there, then it's pointless we sit here. I just want to say at this time, thanks to Mr. Anthony Hylton, former Minister of Energy, Commerce, Trade, Foreign Affairs, for coming on and try to enlighten us a bit about what went on with the logistics hub, the collapse, or the failure of realizing the full potential of a logistics hub in Jamaica, which we are ideally situated. As he said, we are God blessed with it, to say that we could have really been doing great. Some of the problems that we're going through now, we would have been way past them, because we would have been earning enough money to fix a lot of the problems in the country. Things like housing, which, it's just in a terrible state for most, I would say most of the people in the country live in shacks and slums. And what we need to do is find a thing or things that will help us to climb out of our bad situation fast. I would just like again to say thank you for joining me. Unfortunately, it ended prematurely, but we will try to get to Mr. Hylton sometime again in the future to come back with us and to continue this discussion. Thank you for joining me. Have a great evening.